Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be talking about how to survive producer notes. Now, if what you want to do is to succeed in this industry, this is going to be something that will change your life, what we're doing today. If you've never yet worked with a producer, a lot of times people are just unaware of the process, and just understanding it will change things for you. So here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to talk about what are notes, right? What is the producer giving you and why and all of that kind of thing. We'll look at the real problem with notes, what keeps people from succeeding a lot of times. We'll talk about different types of notes. Then I'll give you some solutions. And finally, we'll talk about the upcoming class, Creative Mastery. That's about how to double the quality of your best writing and how to be an absolute pro at taking notes and working with producers. So this will happen. You want to get ready for it. Anytime you work with a producer, an agent, or a manager, you're going to receive notes. And it doesn't matter really how good your script is, you'll still receive notes. I know that there's a lot of people who want to go in and say that their script is absolutely perfect, and they don't want anybody ever to touch it or talk about it and all that kind of thing. Please know if you do that when you're working with any of these, a producer, an agent, or a manager, if they can't work with you to either elevate the script, take it to a new level, or get it ready for production, it's going to be a problem. And we've had, at different times, we've had writers who have been fired from projects because they refused to take notes. We've had writers who lost their agent or manager because of that. Early in the process, I'm talking 10 years ago, that kind of thing used to happen. We made a bunch of changes. We learned a bunch of things from it. But your success is going to depend upon how well you respond. So please, before we even start, if somebody has told you not to take notes, not to make changes when a producer requests them, or any of that, please know whoever that person is, they probably have some kind of wound or fear they're operating out of. Don't listen to that. What you want to do on this is you want to be a total professional. You want to know what you're doing. You want to be absolutely competent when it comes to working with producers, agents, and managers, and notes are where that happens. So let me give you a definition. Notes means essentially this is their way of giving feedback. Now, you probably have gotten feedback from other writers on your script and made improvements. You may have gone to a script consultant or one of the contests where they sent you feedback on your script. Very likely you read through that feedback and you made some improvements, right? So this is a totally okay process. In fact, it's a great process for making you more successful. Let me just tell you where part of this came from. I interviewed a guy named Terry Rossio, who was one of the writers of Shrek and Pirates of the Caribbean and about 10 other $100 million movies. And I said, Terry, I got to ask you a question. This was in front of a live audience. I said, we've got a whole bunch of writers here. You get your script in the door and a producer wants you to make a bunch of changes. I said, how do you feel about that? And he goes, great. He says, that moves things forward. And I'm like, no, really, how do you feel? And everybody laughed. And then he goes, here's how I really feel. To me, it's two things. One is I want to get them intimately involved in this project so they will fight to their death for it. And I was like, wow, hadn't thought of it that way. And he says, the second is I'm basically using them as a creative brainstorming session. So he said, anytime they want to give me notes, he says, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm considering it. I'm working with them. I'm talking with them about it. He says, some of them we may not do, but he says, a lot of times it improves the script, right? So I'm pretty positive on notes if you know what you're doing. Uh, for a producer, the changes or making the script better are all about getting the movie made. And that is what you want also, I think. So let's talk about them. You send it, you bring in your script this way, and it comes back that way. And a lot of times it'll just come back with, here's like the 4 things we want you to do, or something like that. Sometimes it'll come back all marked up. Whatever it is, it's like these, I would look at these as opportunities. I wouldn't look at them as criticisms or those kinds of things. There's a reason why. It's because of why they're giving the notes. So please know, again, if you're working with a real producer, now this is different if you're working with some small producer who also wants to be the writer. So that's the only place where I have concerns about notes. And if that person does want to be the writer also, you have to ask yourself if you want a partner. But assuming you're working with a real producer or an agent or a manager, here's the reasons they give you notes. The first one is to get the movie made, right? They're not criticizing you. They're trying to figure out how to get this movie made. Second one might be to get funding. They may be asking you to make some changes that make it easier to get funding. Set it in a different location that, maybe they could shoot in a state or a country that gives tax breaks because of their shooting a movie. They might want you to make some changes that reduce the budget or increase the budget. They may want you to change the character so they can bring on talent, right? It's like they may be working with a character that is just on the edge of going A-list, and or an actor. And if we can make some minor changes to this, it'll be much more attractive to them. Or they may be asking you to take notes because they're bringing on a director and the director had certain notes. And if you can do a good job on it, you stay on the project. And then the other one is just to solve a production problem. And the closer you get to making the movie, the more likely they'll be coming back with some of these. Hey, we didn't get that one location. So now we need to change this scene. Or the budget got reduced, it got cut in half. We need to make some budget cuts or whatever it is. I have writers who have worked all the way through the entire production, taking notes at the end of every single day and improving tomorrow's scenes. And that's totally okay. Whatever it takes to get the movie made and moving your career forward is good for you. Then, when will they give you notes? So we just talked about this briefly, but sometimes a producer will give you notes before they option the script. And in that case, what they're doing is they're looking at the script and saying, okay, I love the writing, or I love the concept or the characters or whatever it is they love. And there's a few things that I know need to be changed for me to be able to produce it. Let's just see if I can work with this writer. And so they'll give you the list of notes. This is your kind of an audition in a way. You make the changes, go back to them. If they love it, you are in business. They're going to work with you from now on. So it's worth it. They may be at the point where they've optioned it and now they're preparing the script to produce. So they're asking you to make some changes that work for that. When a director comes on, they may ask for changes, or when a major actor comes on, that may happen also. When they get into pre-production, and there's a lot of little changes that happen in the midst of this. We just changed actors, we just changed budget, we just changed locations. There's like 30 kinds of things. We can't do that particular stunt right now. We're shooting in New Mexico and the set doesn't have this one thing. Therefore, we need to rewrite. All kinds of things happen at this point. If you're if you want to get your movie made, it's critical that you can take those notes. Then during production, and this usually happens because something just happened on the set. We had one writer who uh, her script went into production, and about 3 days into it, they fired two of the supporting actors because of something that happened. And they came back and said, "Hey, we need to change every scene they're in from this point on." And it was like, okay, they weren't that important, but it meant she had to rewrite like 7 scenes in order to move forward, and she did, right? So, what's the problem? And let me tell you a story on this first, so you can see it. Uh, Long time ago, Cheryl and I started producing. And we'd gotten scripts into a bunch of different places, but I'd never taken the writer in with me when I was pitching. So we get this one script in. This producer at Warner Brothers comes back. She absolutely loves the script. She wants to do it. She wants a meeting with the writer. And we're meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. So it's like, okay. So I called the writer and I said, "Hey, we're meeting with, Warner Brothers tomorrow. We want you to come to the meeting." She's going to tell you what she thinks about the script. She wants to move forward. She wants to option it. Uh, and so it's like, okay, I pick him up. We drive to Warner Brothers. Uh, we get there, we go in, sit down. She's so happy to see us. She sits down across the table from us, has the script right there, and she says, "I loved your writing. I loved the script." She goes, "I absolutely think we can make this. I only have 4 notes." Now I'm thinking, great. She gives the first note, which was this. She said, "We have another movie being made right now that has an almost identical opening scene to yours. It just went into production, so we're going to need to rewrite this opening scene." And he says, "No, I'm not changing it." And I was like, "What?" We just need to, I'm trying to explain to him at that point. And he's like, "No." He says, "That scene is great." He says, "I love that scene. Everybody loves that scene." And she goes, "I know, but it's in another movie that's being produced by Warner Brothers. We can't have the same scene." And he starts arguing why they need to keep that scene and all that kind of thing. We get to the second change, he does the same thing. So at the end of that one, I looked at her and I said, "Maybe if you could just give me the notes and I'll talk with him and we'll work it out." And she goes, "Yeah, I think that might be better." And she hands me the notes and we leave. Now, I already know there's a pretty good chance this thing's over. We're driving back to his place to drop him off. Complete silence in the car. I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this. And he's over there clearly upset. So about halfway home, I said, "You know what?" I said, "I just realized I didn't prepare you for this." And he doesn't say anything. And I said, "You know what? I should have thought about, okay, she's going to give us notes. Let's talk about how we're going to work together, how we're going to listen to the notes, all that kind of thing." He still doesn't say anything. I get him right to his door and he looks at me and he goes, "I blew it, didn't I?" And I said, "Pretty much." And he goes, "Man," he says, "you're right." He says, "I never even thought about that. I thought she was just going to say yes." Uh, so let's talk about the problem here because it's important. Um, he, by the way, came back to me later on and apologized and he talked about it and everything else. She, on the other hand, changed her mind and we never got back to Warner Brothers with that project, which was sad. But here's the problem. It's the fight, flight, or freeze kind of situation. And if you're somebody who has taken lots of notes from producers and you've been through this experience 5, 6, 7 times and that kind of thing, you won't have this problem. You've been through it. You know what you're doing. If you've never taken notes or have only done it once or twice, and especially if you've only done it with really friendly producers, this still may be something that might happen. It especially happens when somebody is blindsided, when they didn't expect changes, or they didn't expect the kind of change that the producer just asked them to make. And it's easy at that point to go, "What? Are you crazy?" and fight with them. So it's, fight, flight, or freeze. And basically, I'll tell you what he did was he fought, but he also froze. He couldn't answer questions. He couldn't think outside of just saying, "No, I'm not going to do it that way. This script is the best it can be," things like that. It was just, yeah. So he just didn't know what to expect. And again, I hadn't prepared him. I learned from that, by the way. Every writer I ever took in after that, we prepared them. I made sure they knew what they were doing. Now, here, though, it's usually because either you don't know how to make changes, and he didn't. He couldn't think outside the box of how he had already written the script. Doesn't know how to respond professionally. No, he didn't have that. Felt attacked. He absolutely felt attacked. Or took it personally, which he did that too. And my guess is if I would have gotten in the car and started telling him this kind of stuff, we would have had a big fight in the car. Because he was in that. He was traumatized. So these are important. It's important that you know how to deal with these things. The objective when you get notes, when first, before you go in, just prepare yourself. Just assume, no matter what the situation, even if they told you they loved everything about your script, assume they're going to give you notes. Just assume that and get yourself mentally prepared. So your objective is to maintain a professional relationship so that you work together both now and in the future. Taking notes is one of those places where you can easily create that professional relationship. By you responding well, they're going to want to work with you from now on. So this is worth doing. Your objective also is to, in this case, to get the job or to sell your script, right? And even if you've already worked with the person, or let's say they already optioned your script, in that case, then your objective is to stay on the project. So, and then what you want to be doing is making whatever improvements that will move the project forward. The worst thing you can do, again, is like what that writer did. We had another writer that did a similar thing, but basically what he wanted to do was he wanted to communicate that they weren't going to change a word. And he had a deal at Paramount, and they shelved it because he was unwilling to make any improvements whatsoever. That was a tragedy for him. So the reason you're making improvements is to move the project forward. Solutions. First one, don't attach pain to taking notes. And this is before you go in. Before you go in, if you can look forward to taking notes, and I'll give you an example of how to do that in a minute, but if you can look forward to it, if you can, instead of going, "Oh my God, they're going to want to change things," take it the other way. It's like, okay, this is like a major opportunity. So, realize that the producer wants you to succeed. That's important. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get this movie made. And most of the time, they would rather do it by keeping you as the writer on the project and having it be a great experience for you. But if that doesn't work, a lot of times they'll just drop it instantly or drop you, one of the two. Uh, Recognize that producers aren't criticizing. That's not their job. They have one major job in life. They're not the writers. They don't care about that. Their job is to get this moving forward. Their job is to get the deal happening, right? So they're trying to move the project forward. If you recognize that and you go, okay, that's what this is, and you join up with them on that, you're going to be in great shape. And by the way, let me just say this so it's clear. Uh, Producers' notes aren't always the best thing. So, so I want you to know that there are times where they'll come up with ideas and it'll feel great right at that moment because they just created it or they came up with something or they saw a new way to do it. And then you may bring it back in with that change and they'll stand back and go, you know what? I liked it better the way it was before. So keep in mind, they're also trying to be creative at this moment and give them some space in that area. But here's the big one. You can use the producer to brainstorm. You know, at one point I interviewed Terry Rossio, uh, the producer of or the writer of Shrek him and his partner wrote Shrek. They wrote Pirates of the Caribbean and a whole bunch of other, $100 million movies. And this was his thing, right? His thing was, wow, look, I've got a team of people who are working with me on my script. And when they give me ideas for improvement, I'm going to take a look at them and see what's possible. Maybe they came up with something brilliant. And he said a lot of times he used them essentially as professional brainstormers, professional creative people to help him improve the scripts. And then this is the other solution: go in to collaborate, not to protect the words in the script. This is really important. If you find yourself there trying to keep the script exactly the way it is, it's just you're working on a different project than they are. And this is what another professional writer told me. He said, you know what? He says, up until I get to the producer, I'm doing everything I can to make that script what I think it should be. After I get to the producer and we start working together, I no longer care about the words on the page. I'm focused entirely on getting this movie made. So if you can do that, that changes everything. That's you collaborating, that's you working together. It's absolutely not about protecting the script. Now, responding to notes. Let me give you some strategies here. First one, they come in, they say, we need to change X, right? This is version 1. I'm going to give you 2 different versions that cover most of the notes. We need to change X, right? So this may mean different locations, different page count, different lead characters, different ending, different opening, whatever. It's like you got 1,000 things in your script they could ask you to change. And that's okay. If you can find a way to make that change and improve the script, make it even better, then you show up as a totally professional writer. Now, how do you respond to this? In the midst of the meeting, sometimes people think the response is either yes or no. I'm going to decide right now. You don't have to do that. What I do this a lot. I'll say, so let me just make sure. So what you're thinking is X, and I'll respond to them with what I think they're thinking. What you're thinking is we reduce the locations, that will lower the budget. Is that what's going on? What you're thinking on this lead character is if we make that change, it'll make it easier to get an actor. Whatever, or it could just be you saying what you're thinking is the protagonist might be better if we gave them or if we showed their wound early on. Is that right? Right? You just listen to what they said and then respond so that you can get more clarity. Sometimes you will say this back to them and they'll go, oh, yeah, 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 scrap that one. No, because sometimes they just thought of it just now and they haven't actually considered it. And you going back with, so what you're thinking is blah, blah, blah. They may at that point reconsider, and that'll just save you the problem. Or they may come back, and this really helps if they give you more clarity at that point. Another version of that is what do you mean by X? What do you mean when you say you want to elevate the tone, right? And by the way, if you're taking notes and they ever say something you don't understand, it's okay to ask this question, right? Because at that point, you're already in a relationship, you're already working together in some way. Even if they haven't said yes yet, you're in the midst of working together. And if you can get clarity on what they mean, you have a much better chance of actually doing it. Then this one, and this one happens really about every other session I've been in with producers. How might that work together with whatever the other part is? So a lot of times somebody will say, hey, I got a great idea. What if we changed, the first act turning point to X? And then they'll say the ending because, oops, they didn't read the script. And it's like, okay, but let me just ask you, how might that work with the ending, which is what you just said? And we've got a whole movie that happens in between. Or they might ask you to make a change that changes six other setups and payoffs, or that reveals the subtext on the in the dialogue, or something like that, right? So anytime there's a part of the script that disagrees with their improvement, you just ask that. All right, okay, that's interesting. How might that work with? And then you say what the other part of it is. And sorry, today if I'm stepping over my words here, it's because I've got something going on with my throat. But doing this will have them then look at it. It's like, oh wow, you're right. If we have to change the entire structure to make this one tiny improvement, that might not be a good thing, right? So these get you clarity. They also give them a chance to reconsider their note. Now, here's the second version. We need to elevate the quality version, right? So this means we're keeping the same scene, same character, same structure, whatever it is that they're asking you to elevate the quality, but they just want it to be higher quality writing. So if they're saying we need to elevate the quality of the character, lead character, it's like, okay, if that'll increase the chance that we get this movie made, I'm all for that. But I do want to make sure that everybody has some kind of understanding on that. So I'll ask the questions we just talked about. And then I want you to realize this, you don't have to agree to the changes right now. On some of these, this is a solution right here. Let me make sure I understand what you mean. So now you're asking questions. And I'll think about how I might implement these notes. This, by the way, gives you an opportunity to go home, to make the list of the notes while you were there, go home and look through them, think about them. Sometimes they may give you a specific note that when they say it, you don't know how to figure it out yet. And so it doesn't feel right. But you might get home and go, wow, that's a great idea. That's a serious improvement. And at that point, it's like, okay, you didn't cause a problem. You didn't create a riff in the relationship or anything like that. So you gave yourself the out to be able to go home and think about it. And that's another one that's okay to say. You could just simply say, "Hey, let me go home and think about these. These are good notes. I'm really interested in doing this. Let me just think about it for a little bit and see what I can do on it." And then you come back with the ones that you liked. You do those. And the ones that you didn't, that's just another question when you come back to them. You know, it's like I went into one meeting, the writer had made 4 of the 6 changes the producer wanted. And so when we sat down, I just did a quick frame. I said, okay, we went through, we made, or the, she made 4 of the changes already. We have questions on the other 2. Would it be okay if we ask you about those? And it was like, they're happy. The writer did most of what they asked for. We asked questions on the other 2. One of them, the producer just dropped right there. He said, yeah, did I say that? And I was like, well, that's what we got in our notes. He goes, yeah, whatever it was. No, that doesn't work. And then he clarified the other one and we move forward, right? So asking the questions and interacting in a professional way can solve so many things for you. Now, let me give you something else. I had a writer, his name was Richard, calls me up one day and he said he'd gone through a bunch of our classes and he said, Hal, I wanted to tell you, I got my script optioned. And I was like, Richard, congratulations. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. And he goes, yeah, don't be happy yet. And I said, why? And he goes, because they asked me this crazy thing. He said, the producer said, I love your concept. I love your characters. I love your structure. Uh, but I need you to double the quality of the writing. And he says, if you do that, I'll option it. And I was like, really? So double the quality, let's just be clear, means wherever he was 100%. Now he needs to take it to 200%. He needs to improve this in a big way, right? And I was thinking, I sat there and I thought about it for a second. And I went, wow, huh. I said, okay, so let's figure out how to do that. And he says, what are you talking about? And this was his comment. And this is, by the way, this is where you're at. You've done the best job you can, and they're asking you, this is the best script you've ever written. They're asking you to double the quality. So that was his situation. And I said, okay, let me think about that. And he goes, no, he says, there's nothing to think about. It's not possible, right? So my question was, if you've written the best script you've ever written in your life, what would it take to be able to double the quality? And I said at that point, I said, let me think about it. And he goes, there's nothing to think about. He says, I can't do it. He says, do I go back to him and tell him I can't, or do I just go find another producer? I said, okay, give me a few days. So I spent a bunch of time thinking about it. And I realized right off the bat, if they're asking you to make major improvements in quality, this isn't about editing the words, right? Most people would go to editing the words. And it's like, you can take the same scene and edit in words over and over and over and improve it 5 to 15%, but you're not going to double the quality, right? If you have that kind of situation, you've got to make major improvements in the writing and also elevate who you are as a writer. So I went back to Richard and I told him that. And he said, yeah. And how do you do that? And by then I'd already kind of thought about it. I'd put together a model on how you do that. How do you take your best writing and double the quality? So yeah, so that's what this is about. And let me just walk you through this. We have got a model for this that is absolutely incredible. Everything we talked about today, I had told Richard how to do all those things. And he said, yeah, he says, all that sounds great. He says, but I just can't do it. And he thought he could improve by 10 or 15%, but he didn't think that he could actually do this until he went through, I guided him through the process, which then ultimately became the first version of this class. Now, stay with me. I'm going to give you first a special on this, but second, this is one of the only classes that we are going to do live, which means you and I will be meeting, as in the group will be meeting, the class will be meeting once a week during this period of time, a 10-week period of time. And our objective is by the end of it, you have doubled the quality of your writing, and you can take any scene you've written so far and be able to do that. So let me just walk you through it so you can see it. First part is the model, as in what you're doing as a writer. And we're using here the maximum entertainment model because it makes that kind of difference. So the first part of it is you get to the true essence, right? What's the essence of this scene? What's the essence of this character? This is the one thing that is most important about it, right? It's the one thing that absolutely must be done powerfully. And by the way, for most people, especially if you look at most of the scripts that haven't won a contest yet, probably 30% of the scenes were something that the writer wrote early on and then just edited from that point on. There were some maybe that they worked like crazy on, but there are a lot of scenes in a script that hasn't yet gotten to the level of professional. That is, the writer's just not sure what the essence is. And when I was producing, a lot of times I would go back to the writer and I'd say, okay, I want to make sure that I understand what's important to you in all of this. So I would ask them, what is the essence of this scene? What is the main thing that this scene's about? And really, truly, about 20 to 30% of the time, they would say, I don't know. I wrote it. It was a transition scene. Then it turned into this kind of scene. I don't know what it is. And we would just start working with it from there. Second part. Then how do you make these scenes more challenging? If you challenge the lead characters, it challenges the audience. If you challenge them in a unique way, it has the audience now they have to stay with you to go through this because they don't know how to solve it, right? And it's like this, if you haven't been thinking about this, this is one of the areas that you can take almost any scene. If you can make it more challenging, you can often double the amount of conflict, the curiosity for the audience, the curiosity for the reader. Then we give you 20 different ways to make every scene more interesting. So even if you didn't do one of the first two, which by the way, both of these can dramatically elevate any scene. This just in and of itself makes the reading more interesting, makes the reader's experience more interesting, and it makes you look like more of a pro. A lot of times people have a tendency to write scenes kind of in a similar way. It's just how you've always written them. What this gives you is 10 to 15 different ways to think outside the box about this scene without making insane changes to it. And then finally, how do you make sure that the characters in the scenes are inherently dramatic? What this basically means is if you take this character and put them in any situation, drama is going to happen. Now, by the way, you probably know people like that who are inherently dramatic characters. We had dinner last night with a producer who she's an inherently dramatic character. From the second she sits down, there's drama, conflict, comedy going on at the table. And it never stops until she leaves. If you have characters that can do that, especially your lead characters, any scene they're in is going to be significantly more interesting. Now, so using this is a proprietary process that we created. It took us, I created it for Richard. I walked him through it. I interacted with the producer in the midst of that one and asked him questions about what they needed and all that kind of thing. So I had a chance to see what was really going on. And then we took 100 different people through this program and elevated it every single step of the way. So what we discovered was any scene can be written 30 different ways. Back up to talking with Richard, he kept telling me over and over, that's the only way to write that. This opening scene, that's the only way to write that. This character, that's the only way to write that. He did that over and over and over. At the end of the program, I said, okay, now looking at your scenes, do you see them as the only way to write it? And he goes, no. I'm shocked. uh, he said, I can't believe that I said that to you. And it's like, well, that's okay. He just didn't know. He didn't know that you could write it 30 different ways. And by the way, this number doesn't come from something that I made up. We actually took a scene with a test group of 50 different writers I gave them the scene. I said, it starts here, it ends there. Here's the two characters that are involved. Here's the main drama of the scene. Write it. And they came back and we had 30 different scenes. They all followed my instructions exactly, but they wrote it. It ended up being 30 different ways that it was written. And that was when I went, okay, we have something here. Because once you start to see that the same thing can be written 10, 20, 30 different ways, suddenly you're no longer in the box of this is the only way to write it. All I can do is edit the words. Now, so one time only, this is the class. We've done this class, by the way, 20 times behind the scenes with the alumni. I'll show you some of the success that they've had. But this time, this one time, I want to get the recordings on this. I want to be able to put it up in our membership. This one time, it starts on Monday, May 5th. Regular price on it's $2.99. This is what's special about this one. We're doing 10 live Zoom meetings instead of recorded. They are going to be recorded, and I'm going to use the recordings in the class. But this time, you'll get in live. You will be the group who went through the whole thing step by step with me. We'll be doing it every Monday night. If you can't be there on one or more of those nights, it'll be recorded, put up for you to watch the next day. Second, we'll do live Q&A. You'll be interacting with me on this. I'm not going to do script consulting, just so you know. It's like I can't stop and go through your script and tell you exactly what to do with it. But I will answer your questions that will help you do that. And I will answer your questions that will make sure that you really, truly understand this at a very high level. I want you to have mastery of this model. So that's why we're doing this part. You'll also then get AI feedback on every major assignment. And this is important. We spent a lot of money developing an AI feedback that is designed around our programs only and is completely safe. So nobody's going to see your work. There's no AI that's trained on it. Not even our AI is trained on it. You'll be the only one that sees your work and sees the feedback that it gives. So we made sure of that so that we could protect you and so that we made sure that any of the writers going through this have the best possible chance at this. But what this basically means is the moment you write something and you go, okay, I got it. You plug it in for the feedback, and 1 minute later, you get the feedback on that, which will now help you improve it while it's fresh in your mind. We've had now, let's see, 3 classes that we've had writers go through. They have said this made a significant difference, not only in the writing, but in helping them elevate who they were as a writer, because they got it while it was fresh in their mind and they were able to make the change right then and to add that new way of thinking to their writing. And then you'll master the double the quality model that I showed you earlier. And if you looked at that and thought, well, that's not that much, when you get in here, you're going to see this right here will change your life as a writer. It will take you, if you're a good writer, it'll take you to a level of being professional when it comes to the quality of the drama that you're writing. So here's the special price on this. And this is just because I want a lot of people in this class. We already have, I think there's 30 that have already signed up for it. Special price on this for the first 10, $149. If you're past the first 10, it'll jump, and I think it jumps either to $179 or $199. I'll tell you, whichever it is, it doesn't make any difference. This is going to, over time, you are going to say this is the best thing you ever did for your writing. So it saves you $151. You're getting in at half price. Again, the main reason is just because I want enough people in here so that when we get to this Q&A, we will have plenty of questions that will help you think through and understand the process even better. Because a lot of times, if you ask a question, yes, you're going to learn from that. But when you hear somebody else who has a question that you hadn't yet thought of, that'll give you another level of depth to your understanding. So to me, that's worth it. So you're basically right now, first 10 are getting this at half price. The second 10 are getting in, for just another $30 or so. And again, this will make such a difference to the quality of your writing that it'll change everything. If you're entering contest right now, you're probably spending $50 to $70 to enter those contests. Here, do this and you triple your chance of being a finalist. Let me just, oh, and by the way, here's the link down here. But here are some of the things that's happened for the writers who have gone through this class. We had a winner at the Nickel Fellowship, right? This is the Academy. This is the most prestigious contest in this industry. It's the one that people look at on a regular basis. We've had like 6 finalists and 1 person who was one of the winners. If that happens for you, your whole life is different. We've had grand prize people at Page International. One of the writers won the grand prize there, immediately got his script optioned. He got a manager out of that, and he ended up working with a director who hired him to write a script. So this made a huge difference for him, and he credited it to this class. We've had, I don't know how many, but I would say either 3 or 4 first place at Final Draft Big Break contest. 2 of them got managers. And we've had over 100 writers who have either landed managers or made deals with producers by going through this program. So here's the link. Just write it down, bit.ly, bit.ly/quality-mastery. No caps, no spaces, only 1 dash right there. So again, it's bit.ly, bit.ly/quality-mastery. Put that in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and come join us for this program that will take your writing to the level you've always wanted it to be. So that's it. This is a program I've delivered. We've probably delivered it 20, 30 times. I've delivered it to the alumni live 4 or 5 times. This time will be the best we've ever done. And part of it will be because you're going to be there. So I look forward to seeing you there. Again, just take the link, put it in, sign up at this special price right now. Get yourself ready. Once you come in, every single day of this class, you are going to learn something new. You are going to improve your process of doubling the quality of your writing, and you are going to get better at taking notes from producers, which is one of the keys to your success as a writer. So again, looking forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye, everyone.